So next up, I have my good friend, Professor Tsedal Neeley, joining us.
And
Tsedal is...
I'm going to just remind everybody, because we introduced her at the very beginning, and I want to make sure that everybody knows exactly who she is. Tsedal Neeley is the author of The Digital Mindset, What It Really Takes to Thrive in the Age of Data, Algorithms, and AI. She is also a professor at Harvard Business School, Karim's colleague, and she's also the Associate Dean for Faculty Development. So she has a very important management role with respect to Harvard Business School, in addition to being a brilliant professor and author. And so thank you very much, Tsedal. I know that you have a very hectic schedule, and we are very grateful to you for coming to join us. We talked about your book earlier. It's coming out in May, available pre-sale on Amazon today. So we've got that plug in there. We're really fortunate to have two of the leading experts on this topic, the intersection of business and AI, with us today, Karim being one and you being another. Thank you for joining us. Now, I turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Tsedal, before you get going, so listen, this is like, invite my boss to Africa.com day for me. So, Wambui, my boss at Mozilla, and Tsedal is literally my boss because she's the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Development and also Chair of the Christensen Teaching and Learning Center at HBS. And part of her responsibilities means that she looks after the technology and operations management unit. So she's always giving me calls, telling me I'm not working hard enough and not writing enough and not doing enough speaking. So hopefully you guys, I'm trying to impress my boss as we do this as well. So and as you know, so Tsedal, we both basically joined HBS at the same time. And in many ways, we sort of took parallel paths. I was focused on technology. Tsedal was focused on organizations. And I recall a session that both of us did, a week-long executive session we both did in Australia before the pandemic, where we were basically forced to watch each other teach for a whole week. And that's when both of our light bulbs went off, saying that the conversation about AI and technology is incomplete without talking about organizations, and that these two things come hand in hand. And so while I've written a book about the technology strategy with competing age of AI, Tsedal's new book on the digital mindset is really, what do leaders need to know about AI, both personally, but also for their organizations? So with that, Tsedal, why don't you walk us through the core tenets of the digital mindset and what the leaders that are here joining us today should know about the transition that all of us are around the globe are in with regards to digital.
So thank you so much, Karim. I would be delighted to do that, but we all know that you're my real boss. So no one makes me work harder than Karim, but I'm so delighted to be here. Happy Women's Day and Africa Day as well for us. So it's terrific to be here. And I thought it would be appropriate for me to begin talking about the digital mindset with a fantastic leader who hails from Africa. Some of you may recognize Sarah Menker. Sarah Menker, if you don't know her story, she sat at her desk in 2008, and as an energy commodities trader at Morgan Stanley, she saw the financial markets collapse. She realized, sitting around with her colleagues, that a catastrophe was taking place. And so one of her colleagues sitting right next to her says, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is Armageddon. We need to buy gold." And Sarah, who hails from Ethiopia, says, "Gold? We don't need gold. We need potatoes. We need potatoes. We all need potatoes." He laughed. She laughed nervously, but she was actually serious, because for her, coming from a famine-stricken Ethiopia, the first thing she thought about was, how will this work when it comes to the global food industry? So after that moment, she actually started to think, what can she do? How can she think about agriculture in Ethiopia? And she soon discovered, after 2 weeks of research and reading and looking and talking to people, that even an industry as seemingly earthbound and analog as agriculture was in the throes of massive digital transformation. And so she had to begin to adopt a digital mindset. And what that meant was, in her research, she soon learned that there was so much interconnection and data that was needed to figure out this market. So, for example, a successful Ethiopian landowner would have to buy crop insurance in order to become a farmer, but there was no crop insurance market. If no bank would lend money without the security of crop insurance, then the cost of capital would be much higher. And the land was so remote, it meant that you needed new infrastructure. So this continued to be alarming to her. And she started to think about, wait a minute, I can't stay at Morgan Stanley. I need to get into this business because a global food shortage would soon follow if we didn't take all this data and begin to predict and look at the dynamics of agriculture worldwide. And so here she is. She knows a little bit of analytics, but nothing else. So what does she do? Sarah begins to ask lots of questions. She starts to learn a little bit about computing. She starts to learn a little bit about AI. She starts to learn a little bit about what it takes, the ecosystem view of the world. And ultimately, she launches her company called Grow Intelligence. This company is, in fact, so data-driven and data-intensive that she figured out, once she established Grow Intelligence, that she needed to develop a platform that could ingest 400 million unique agriculture data sets that amass to more than 500 trillion data points. So when people ask about digital mindset and what kind of skills do you need to think scale, you need to think computing, you need to think collaboration, you need to understand how all of this comes together. And in fact, Grow Intelligence was so advanced that in 2019 in the US, there was a government shutdown and Grow Intelligence stepped in for the USDA because they were the only ones who can provide predictions for the entire agricultural industry worldwide. Why do I start with the story of Sarah Menker? First, she inspires me. She's extraordinary, but she also has a digital mindset and didn't start out this way. It's important to understand that. So what is the digital mindset? Well, the digital mindset actually is our ability to see new possibilities using data, technology, algorithms, and AI to chart a new path for the future. What else do we know about the digital mindset? There's always the question of, well, how do I do this? Do I need to learn how to code? Do I need to learn statistics? Well, what we discovered in this project, my co-author Paul Leonardi and I, we both got our PhDs from Stanford's Management Science and Engineering group.
What is Stanford? I'm sorry, is that university?
It's only
it's a small school
it's
in
only
California.
A school that's situated in Silicon Valley, the hub of technology in the world.
I'm sorry. No,
and
I graduated from MIT, so like Stanford, like you don't.
Yes,
Anyway,
Stanford
sorry.
It's a little west,
Sorry.
but here's the thing. Stanford was among the only programs when I was getting trained over 20 years ago that had an organizational behavior group in the engineering school looking at the intersection of work, technology, and organizations, because it was clear that technology was going to revolutionize the world, and we needed to understand technology all the way through when we thought about organizations. MIT didn't have that program at the time. Anyway,
That's right.
so let me talk to you about the 30% rule of developing the digital mindset. Digital transformation, or the digital mindset, is about learning the language of data. So inspired by linguistics, we looked at the top 1 percentile of organizations and people around the world who are now operating in the AI realm, who are digital first companies. And what we learned was, no, you don't need to become a data scientist. You don't need to become a technologist, but you need to understand 30% of everything. Why 30%? In linguistics, in order for us as non-native English speakers to operate in an English-driven world, we only need to understand 30% of the English language, which is about 3,500 words, and effectively work in any global environment. We don't need 12,000 words, which makes us native masters of the English language. We only need 30%. So what does this mean in a digital realm? We need to understand a little bit about coding. We don't need to be the ones who are coding, but we better understand how Python works if that's the programming language that we need. We better understand where data are stored. We better understand the various ways to analyze data. We better know how machines learn. We better know how algorithms operate. And we only need 30% in order to do that. And so, Karim, before we have a moment to talk to one another, I want to mention just a couple of more things. When people think about the digital operations of a company and they think, oh, it belongs in that group there, it's a mistake, because everyone has shared responsibility for data governance, how we think about data across our entire organization, how we think about computing, how we think about change and change management. And that requires us to know a little bit about our systems architecture. We can't be blind to those things. And we need 30% of that as well. And ultimately, in this book, we highlight the 3 C's of the digital mindset. The first one is collaboration. Collaboration, not in the sense that we think about people just working together, in the collaboration with AI. So I often talk, I have the book, Remote Work Revolution, Succeeding from Anywhere. And I often talk about how it's so important to not just worry about collaborating with Sal and Sally. We need to learn how to collaborate with AI bot. That's what it means. When we're collaborating in these environments, we need to understand how to use digital tools to work. When people are in these debates, in-person work, hybrid work, remote work, what I say is remote work, hybrid work is digital work. So we need to understand those things in order to scale and advance our work, distributed work. The second C is computation. I touched on this a bit, but we need to understand statistical reasoning. We need to be able to understand how machines learn. Boy, do we need to understand the black box of bias, because what goes in, the input, is what comes out. And you can't leave that up to the technologists to enter our data and create our models. We need to understand the factors and the variables. And finally, change. Change is one of the most important competencies for leaders, because we will be in this perpetual state of change and learning. And we need to understand how to bring people along in a digital environment where people have to actually develop new skills. So how do you do that is a fundamental question. I'll stop here, Karim, and happy to talk about anything.
So that a fantastic view in your book, and what you were trying to get us all to learn. But I get your point, Tsedal, about the 30%. But that's like me trying to be on a diet and like not eating like trying to cut down on my carbs. It's so hard to get 30% less carbs in my body. Like I love the bread, I love the ice cream, especially if you give me Rocky Road ice cream, I really want it. So it's hard for me to get the 30% I need to. So how do you what do you tell leaders about, because many of them excelled in a non-digital world. Many of them excelled in a non-data world. Many of them excelled without having to worry about these gobbledygooks of statistics and like means and, you know, deep learning and XGBoost and all that kind of stuff. So now you're telling me I spent all this time becoming a leader. I know how to work with my teams and so forth, and now I got to learn computation. I got to learn. I got to do programming.
Yes.
What?
You do. And you don't need to do programming. You're not going to be the programmer to do workflows and to come up with systems engineering, etc. But you better understand how to ask the right questions, how to make the right decisions, how to think about a new business model. Yes, and yes, and yes. And here's the thing, Karim. In some of our high schools today, in the 9th grade, they're requiring statistics for graduation. We know at many institutions, and we talked about MIT and Stanford, whether you're a theater major, biomedical engineering, or any other major, everyone is now required to take a semester of coding. Python is the one that people are learning. We also know that we are surrounded by Gen Zs who are digital natives. We all know that our children do programming today. So this is a new language, it's a new lens, and we have to learn it. And the last thing that higher education is pushing, particularly in certain programs, is agile methodologies. I'm talking about Scrum and different ways, rapid ways of working. So it's a total mindset shift. So if leaders are not learning enough, that's why we talk about the 30% rule. That's why we talk about the digital mindset. In order to lead the digital organization, they will be lost.
Wow, that's pretty scary. So they're going to be lost. And so how do you get over the psychological inertia around this? What advice do you give to leaders as they start this journey?
You start somewhere. You know, Karim, you chair a program, HBAP, Harvard Business Analytics Program. Have you mentioned that yet?
No, I don't self-advertise too much, you know.
Okay. I want to mention it because it was several years ago that you put together a program that was interdisciplinary, where you have someone from statistics teaching in the program, you have someone from computer science department at Harvard teaching in the program, you have folks from organizational behavior, people analytics teaching in the program. So everyone is learning both statistics and programming, and they're doing it in 9 months intensely, but maybe a year spreading it out in an asynchronous way. Those people have a digital mindset from which to build, and they're learning something every day. So I've worked with organizations who've been at the forefront of this, right? Building digital factories and digital learning factories, and you cannot avoid it. But the thing about it is, once you begin learning, and for me, this journey began maybe about 5-6 years ago when I started to say, okay, let me look at some Python codes. Let me look at R. Let me see how these work. Took an entire course. I tried to take a course at the Harvard Business School. It was hard to take a course with people that you were a professor in too, so that didn't quite work out. So I went to MIT and took an entire AI course where I learned about all of these tools from natural language processing onwards. But I will admit, my career started 20 years ago where I actually was in technology, in telecom. So I've always loved technology. So you start, you learn, and then from there, you'll see how you build. It's no different than language.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So when you're learning a new language, you have to learn it, you have to practice it. You don't have to become fluent in it, but to be operational, you have to learn a new language. And when you're learning a new language, you always feel like an idiot initially. Like I always I don't know what's going on. All the psychological stuff comes in. but you have to get over that barrier and
You
still
do.
persist and still do the work.
You do. And you know, in this book, The Digital Mindset, we actually cover the 30% that people need. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever written, by the way, Kareem, because I wrote a section on blockchain, which meant
Yeah.
I had to learn the ins and out and cite you a lot. I had to write the stats section. I had to really understand cybersecurity, which is another topic that every leader needs to understand. Cybersecurity can't live in IT. We all need to think about privacy and security of data and ensuring that our teams are equipped as well. So the 30% actually makes it manageable. So if you're on a diet, you're cutting a little bit of the carbs, not 100%, but just a little bit of it.
So Tsedal, we have 5 minutes left. And as you're talking, you know, there are two elements here for leaders. One is their own personal journey that they have to go on, but then they also have to lead the organization as well in the journey. Because if the leaders aren't bought into this, how will they get their organizations going? So I know we don't have that much time, but tell us from your research, from your work, from your advising, what are effective ways for organization leaders to transform, to help their transformation of their organizations? I mean, that's a whole other course that, you know, Tsedal needs to do and work on. But just maybe give us a little bit of a hint around it, so that our leaders are both ready for themselves, but also for their teams that they're responsible for as well.
You know, Kareem, I would love to just, since we're all digital today, I would love to bring in a 2x2. And as
Yes,
you
by the
know,
way, it's 2x2 is like in our contracts with Harvard Business
yeah,
School. We always have to give a 2x2. So thank you for doing that.
required. It's required. So I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, pulling out a 2x2. So
Right.
think of two dimensions where leaders have to make sure that people have buy-in in terms of, is this important to us and to our organization for our future? And the other thing is, people have to feel like they have the capability to learn digital, to learn about algorithms and how machines learn, etc. And you can think of buy-in as get people's minds, and the capability part is, in a sense, actually, this is the people's minds and this is their hearts, right? So if you think about, if people have low buy-in and low sense of capability when it comes to digital, how are they feeling? Oftentimes,
like crap.
They're terrible. They feel oppressed. They feel like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. But
Must be on a carb binge.
Yes, that's the worst. Imagine there's high buy-in. You believe you can do this, but you don't think you have the capability. You're 45 years old. How can I learn this whole new language? And if you're in this boat, you're kind of frustrated because you want to, but you don't think you can. But what if you have low buy-in, but high capacity? You know, you took computer science class in high school, you know, you're digitally blessed and all of those things, but you don't believe in this. You don't believe in this. These oftentimes are the whatever people.
Yes, checked out. Yes.
Checked out. Ultimately, you want everyone in here inspired, learning something new every single day, taking classes, etc. So if you map people onto this, the beauty of this hearts and minds framework is you can move people. And how do you move them, Kareem? Increase buy-in, increase capability, training, messaging, nonstop, all day, every day, for years.
I love it. And, you know, this is so important because you as a leader have to both have the buy-in yourself and the capability yourself. You have to believe that you can do this and that this is the right thing for your organization and the future of your organization. So if you yourself haven't bought in yourself, how do you expect your organization to do that? And then your 2x2, if you can again show that 2x2, is that actually very important to sort of look at that 2x2 and sort of see that your entire organization is going to be spread across this 2x2, right? And you should be able to figure out where people are and move them along the way. Tsedal, I could spend,
This is key, yes.
yeah. So Tsedal, I could spend, hours talking to you, and we do. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to encourage all the folks that are out in Zoom land and Facebook land to buy. Tsedal has two. She's my boss, but she's also like very productive. So she wrote the most salient book ever, Remote Work Revolution, during the pandemic. Pandemic hit, and she goes, "Yo, I'm gonna go write this book." I'm like, "Oh." She wrote the book, and it's done amazing. And then while that book was being done, she's finishing up the second book. And so anyway, I feel like a slouch when I'm with Tsedal, but it's so fantastic that you're able to join us, Tsedal, for this conversation.
It's an honor. Thank you so much. So much.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Great. And all the socials are there.
Tsedal, I must echo Karim's comments. I see all the chat is going crazy. Everybody loved your presentation. I did as well. I've heard great things about you, and I'm so pleased that I have a chance to meet you through this event. I've heard that you're going to be the next president of the United States, and I understand why.
On that note, it is such an honor, but I just would urge every single person here, start somewhere and build and build and build. It'll be exciting over time. Bye, everybody.